One of the most brutal moments at last night's debate had to be Ted Cruz launching his assault against Donald Trump over Trump's New York values, and Cruz feeling triumphant as he ended his attack, and then, unfortunately, Trump responded and it all fell apart. But first, here is his attack on Trump.
Senator Cruz, you suggested Mr. Trump, quote, embodies New York values. Could you explain what you mean by that?
You know, I think most people know exactly what New York values are.
I'm from New York.
Well, you're from New York, so you might not. But I promise you in the state of South Carolina, they do. But everyone understands that the values in New York City are socially liberal or pro-abortion or pro-gay marriage, focused around money and the media. And I guess I can frame it another way. Not a lot of conservatives come out of Manhattan. I'm just saying.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, he's smirking. He's happy with himself. And so he launched that attack, which of course had been scripted down to the syllable. And he's just at the top of the world. He's feeling so good. And then Trump responded in a totally fair way. Wasn't cynical at all. And here's that.
Conservatives actually do come out of Manhattan, including William F. Buckley and others, just so you understand. And just so, if I could, because he insulted a lot of people, I've had more calls on that statement that Ted made. New York is a great place. It's got great people. It's got loving people, wonderful people. When the World Trade Center came down, I saw something that no place on earth could have handled more beautifully, more humanely than New York. You had 100 thousands of people killed, and the cleanup started the next day, and it was the most horrific cleanup probably in the history of doing this and in construction. I was down there, and I'd never seen anything like it. And the people in New York fought and fought and fought, and we saw more death, and even the smell of death. Nobody understood it, and it was with us for months, the smell, the air. And we rebuilt downtown Manhattan, and everybody in the world watched, and everybody in the world loved New York and loved New Yorkers. And I have to tell you, that was a very insulting statement that Ted made.
Governor Bush.
Oh, that smile on Ted Cruz's face.
I mean, Donald Trump calling you out for being insulting. It's like Chris Christie calling you out for being out of shape.
Acknowledged. I'm turning a new leaf on the Chris Christie. I'm going to try to be.
Jimmy's a comedian, and you get to make whatever joke you want.
And I've told a million in the past.
Yeah.
But this is one of my New Year's resolutions. I was going to make a joke for a second about what Chris Christie's might have been, but I'm not going to because of mine. So we talked a little bit about last night about bringing up the whole 9/11 thing, and it had. I disagree with Cenk. I don't think that it really had anything to do with what Ted Cruz was saying. What Ted Cruz was saying was awful, but it's also something that almost every Republican says.
Yeah.
If you're from San Francisco or California, if you're from the East Coast, you suck. It doesn't matter that there are millions of Republicans who live in those states. Screw them. They all have those values. He was actually largely right about the lack of conservatives in Manhattan. It's actually like 10-1 Democrats. I was surprised to find out, considering business and all that. So I feel like the response actually wasn't accurate, but you bring up 9/11 and you win whatever debate you're in, even if he says we've rebuilt as if he had anything to do with it. And so that took the wind out of his sails. And so we want your responses, obviously, all of you, especially you weren't here for the coverage, but it has not played well in New York as well, as you might not be surprised to find out.
Sure. I mean, it was interesting, the debate champion, the college debating champion, all he had, this is Ted Cruz, obviously, all he had was that he just conceded with a little round of applause himself.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course,
which we cut just there, but well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But one thought I had, and this is, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is he making a backdoor anti-Semitic statement when he says we all know what New York values are? Wink, wink.
I hadn't thought about
that's
that.
what New York's known for. That was kind of my immediate thing, and then he goes on to kind of qualify it by saying, well, actually, it's you're liberal, you're pro-gay marriage and pro-choice, and so. But I don't know.
I can't rule that out. I didn't see that in it, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, I feel like look, I think that for a candidate to go after Jewish people would be a disastrous idea, right? Like if he's trying to make an anti-Semitic remark during a debate, I mean, he has absolutely no sense of what's going to be political suicide, right? So I really think he was trying to make a point about social values and how liberals are, you know, immoral and, oh my God, they want gays to get married. Aren't they so terrible? But I think that Donald Trump's attack on him, oddly enough, as we were talking about during debate coverage, was one of the few times where it was used in kind of the proper context, even though that's not what, you know, Ted Cruz was talking about. Ted Cruz was not referring to the victims of 9/11 or those who helped with the cleanup effort. He was only specifically talking about the social values of liberals. And
14 years later.
Look, 14 years later, and look, here's the thing. I think it's going to destroy Ted Cruz, and even though I think that was an unfair attack by Donald Trump, I'm elated that this attack happened because I think, look, if Cruz was the front runner for the Republicans and he won the Republican ticket, right? I think that it would be a little more difficult for a Democratic president to get elected in the general election. Don't you guys think?
You think that Ted Cruz would do better than Donald Trump?
Yeah.
It's possible.
I think it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah, I think he's taken a little more seriously than Trump, I think.
Yeah,
well,
I
certainly,
agree.
yes, because he's already a senator and he doesn't say his outrageous things. He says his outrageous things very much more, you know, calculating than Donald Trump does. Donald Trump's just throwing shit on the wall and sees what sticks, right? And Ted Cruz knows how to play that game where he can still go and be in social circles and not be considered a racist.
He also doesn't know how to cook bacon on the barrel of a machine gun.
Exactly. We know that.
Which Donald Trump, I don't know if Donald Trump's got that yet, but he has done that.
Yeah.
And he's got the endorsement of the Duck Dynasty guy.
Yeah, we showed that yesterday.
So let's not forget that in his back pocket.
Maybe Trump has gone duck hunting, but we don't know. We don't have the video evidence. And what would have been nice to so Trump there, it seems like what he's saying is the country, the world figured out after 9/11. For some reason they didn't know it beforehand, but after 9/11 that New Yorkers were real people and that they came together in some way that proved that they were real humans all along and we should acknowledge their value. They still attack Washington, D.C. values, of course, and rightly so, even though 9/11 also affected Washington, D.C. And if you can see that people are going through absolute hell, and that, to you, it makes sense that that is what's going to open up the eyes of the world, then why, when you look at Syria and you see the literal hell every day that people are still going through, it's not one event and then we recover, and you say, no, fuck those people, we're sending them back there, they can die over in Syria, we don't care. He's pretending to have empathy, but it's just an act. He's seen empathy before, and he did a pretty good impersonation of it on the stage there, but he doesn't actually have it in his heart because he wouldn't talk about Muslims and particularly Syrians the way that he has. But as we said earlier, the attacks on New York values did not just lead to him being bitch slapped by Donald Trump. Pretty much everybody's taking the opportunity to attack Ted Cruz over that. Here is the Daily News, the cover. We often criticize, rightly so, their covers, but in this case,
they love to be, you know, as controversial as possible, to get as much attention as possible. I'm sure some people love that cover. I think it goes way too far. It's so classless and ridiculous, and if anyone can't see through how unfair and lowbrow Donald Trump's attack was, well then you want to go against Ted Cruz. I hate Ted Cruz, right? But that attack was unfair. That's not what he was referring to. The fact that New Yorkers in general are upset because they feel like Ted Cruz was insulting those involved in 9/11 or the victims of 9/11 is just ridiculous. Like, dig a little deeper, please.
Well, I will say, I think what Ted Cruz and what the Republicans do is, well, we're going to talk about what David Bratt says kind of in the same thing coming up in the next segment about how they're the real Americans.
Yes.
Conservative values are American values and liberal values are somebody else's, European or French. That's what they always say. Bernie Sanders wants to be European.
French.
Or worse, French, right? But except sometimes we love the French. I don't know, it depends.
August. Yeah, so, August. It was a good month for them.
Yeah, August, you're right.
Yes.
So that's what I think maybe Donald Trump was like, hey, you don't think we're real New Yorkers? When people attack America, they attack New York. So maybe that's, so I will give it to him on that. And it's just nice to see somebody smack down Ted Cruz, anybody getting smacked down like that. And Donald Trump has the ability to make them all look like his little bitch, and he does at will.
Yeah.
This is true, but it is interesting. It's the Republican nightmare, though, surely, when you've got the #1 candidate he's being questioned by the number 2 candidate who himself is being questioned. So it's the Canadian against the New Yorker, and they're kind of like they're basically taking each other out for not being eligible enough because of each where they were born.
Trump was very successful during that debate in attacking Cruz. I mean, he knew that Cruz was second to him. He probably saw that poll that you mentioned during the beginning of our debate coverage that showed that if everyone else dropped out and it was between Trump and Cruz, Cruz could beat Trump, right? Yeah. And so his attacks during last night's debates were excellent if you're a Trump supporter. And it wasn't just that 9/11 attack. There was also the attack on whether or not Cruz is a U.S. citizen. And at first I was like, come on, let's move on. Can he really run for president? Yes, he can run for president. Let's forget about it. But there are some, little tidbits there that make it a little more complicated.
I don't think... here's what I don't think it's going to happen, that Ted Cruz is going to have to drop out because he's not...
I don't think that either. I don't think that either.
No, I understand that. But I just don't see it happening.
But what's brilliant about that strategy and that tactic is he hasn't actually said that. What he said is, if I was you, I would just have it verified, because I wouldn't want the spectre of that hanging around, because that would be awful. But I'm not saying that you're not eligible, but just get it checked out.
Look, that's all you have to do. That's you have to introduce doubt in the voters' minds, and then all of a sudden they're finicky, especially this early on in the election.
And what is brilliant about him is the fact that he then dominated a big portion of the debate. So he is still setting the agenda.
Exactly.
They're still dancing to his tune, and I thought he did a phenomenal job, and I think it was a deliberate ploy to seem much more centered. This is Trump, much more, I don't want to say presidential, but much more an adult.
Not a 4-year-old?
Yes. Yeah, on the stage. And but he commanded the tempo, I think, of that debate last night.
Watching it live last night, I missed a lot of that stuff. So I went home and I watched, they had a director's DVD cut of the GOP debate last night. It had some bonus racism in it, and it was narrated, it had the voiceover by Hitler. It was really nice.